So, as you may or may not know, I have been in this lifelong study of different religions, and of course, I consider myself a Christian, or sort of a anyway. For those, so people have head explosions. I grew up in a Christian home, and I consider myself a Christian as it's part of my culture. But I was always frustrated with the lack of stories about Jesus when he was, between the ages of say 12 and 30 or whatever. So one of the things I have found is in India, the culture of the yogi. We call it yoga here, but it's more of the Westerners have westernized yoga into an exercise, when really in India it has always been sort of the seeking of spirituality. And it's kind of a circular reference, because in yoga the seeking itself is the spirituality. So you're not necessarily seeking something, a final answer. The act of seeking is the spirituality part of it. Anyway, it's complicated, and that wasn't what this video was about. I always get off track in my videos. It's funny, but the reason I mentioned it is because one of my favorite gurus is Sadhguru, and I don't know if I've ever put links to his channel, but he has a YouTube channel. So he's he has sort of westernized himself enough that he can have an influence worldwide, which I think is incredible. He has had a great success in India. Turn the truck off. With and this is what this video is about. He has had great success in inspiring an environmental movement in India. The problem with India is that their water sources have become so polluted, and the need for water, obviously clean water, is such a huge issue with their population. And he recognized this some 20 years ago or something in his process of becoming enlightened. One of the things that he did was create this thing called Rally for Rivers, and he has gotten over, I think, 1.6 billion trees planted along the rivers, because he himself did this, along with others, did this study that, obviously the trees, forested areas help absorb and maintain the water, because in India they get like 45 days of rain, and they have to hold that. They have to have organic mass along the rivers and around the rivers to try to hold that moisture, and then allow it to be released into the rivers slowly. And of course that cleans the water, and obviously the forests are a great filter system for our water system. So most of their rivers are forest fed. They have a lot of, some rivers that are glacier fed, but most of them are forest fed. So he led this environmental movement where there was like millions and millions of people, probably the largest environmental movement of, and I'm coming to my point here soon, bear with me, where millions of people planted trees along, and the way he got them to do this was to change their mindset from their agricultural system, from a crop-based economy, to, he showed the farmers how a tree-based economy could be economical. It could increase their income, their livelihood, and that's how he inspired these people through education to change, and they're in the process of. It's a huge, successful environmental project. And what's funny to me is that when I was listening to him speak to the UN, and I'll try to put a link when I get back to the office, that he basically, everything that, you got to understand that he's probably that culture is probably one of the most objective In other words, there's no politics or religion, and this is what appeals to me, is that it's strictly um, fact-based or realism. There's more. There's realism involved. In other words, what is the problem? How can we fix it? With minus the politics, and it just became blatantly aware to me why he would maybe not be successful at the UN is that he was preaching. First of all, he was combining in, environmentalism with capitalism, which you don't see in our culture. In our culture, the politics has infiltrated the environmental culture, right? So it's more of a left-leaning, tree-hugging, spiking trees. They hate capitalism. Nobody can have a livelihood and be conservative. Conservation at the same time. That's where the word conservative comes from. We are the original conservationist, or the true conservationist. Our lumber industry plants more trees than it takes for lumber. And that was one of the issues that he brought up, was that India imports millions of board feet of lumber every year, and that when back in the colonial days, when the UK or Britain colonized, they created these laws that prevented people from harvesting trees for the lumber industry. So that socialist system held people down. But so now what he's trying to do is bring back a culture of, yes, if the lumber is an economy that you pick or whatever, and you want to plant trees, and of course just the whole system takes time, so you're not actually cutting down all the trees that you place. It's just like the lumber industry, huge tree farms, that are planted and harvested in sequence, so that you always have a supply of lumber. But that's just an example of how you can combine economics. Oh shoot, I'm getting a battery warning. How you can combine, I got a battery warning in case I had a blip there. How you can combine economics, capitalism, with objectivism and non-politics and non-emotion, and just solve a problem. But the funny thing was, I was sitting there thinking, he's sitting there talking to a bunch of socialists about giving power to local people, and I thought, man, you're just spewing out words to these people, because these are people who want to control people. They don't want to help people. They don't want to develop policies like, you can grow trees and sell them for lumber, and as long as you're replenishing that, they don't want that. They want to have policies that say, no, you can't harvest your trees for lumber. They want to control the economy. You see, and I think a lot of the tree-based economy that I need to look more into it to see what types of, I'm probably, fruit trees or something. It's not all a lumber-based economy, but the whole point is that it's funny to see cultures around the world, and the people of India are some of the most objective people, because they're not inbred with politics and religion. A lot of people don't understand that the Hindu, it's not a religion. Hindus are not religious people. Yoga is not a religion. It's more of a philosophy, and they don't have a god. Like in yoga, Shiva is the ultimate yogi. He's not a god. He's just someone who you aspire to be. So in that culture, seeking knowledge, just the act of seeking is the spiritual part of it. And I don't claim to know all about this. I just from what I've studied over the years. I can understand why. I can understand the draw of people like Steve Jobs and those people who have gone and tried to understand, because obviously Steve Jobs had to be a capitalist and he was seeking some sort of spirituality at the same time. And so I see that draw now. And anyway, I just thought it's funny. If you get a chance, go look at Sadhguru. It's SADH Guru. That's his title. His name is Jaggi something. I forgot his last name, Indian name, but he goes by his spiritual name, Sadhguru, and SADHGURU. And watch this video, most current. His videos are really cool. They're really objective, very practical, common sense, and it gets you kind of on a track of where you're filtering out, you're purging this thing that we have been culturalized with politics and religion, where we're always battling each other. There's always a conflict. There's always a battle, and it's mainly politics and religion. It's funny how that works. But anyway, I just thought I would bring that up and try to influence some of the people that I know or try to ask them to go look at this stuff, because it inspires me. I have always been the main reason I have always considered myself a conservative is because I do care about the earth. I do care about resources. I do care about waste. You talk to people that I'm involved with in my business. Waste is a huge issue. Conservation is an issue. But I don't interject politics into it, you see? And that's why this is kind of, to me, it has kind of found a place in my heart. And I wish more people in the United States could be like this. Anyway, just thought I'd I just saw that video about Sadhguru speaking to the United Nations about water issues, and thought I'd share it. So, thanks, guys.